So, so welcome to December. It's Matt Wheeler is going to show his socks time.
And they are not festive. Um,
Oh, I put my
I didn't,
holiday earrings on.
you know what is so funny is that I didn't even, honestly, this morning, I didn't even think about it. Oh, you know what? I
He has
can
extra
show you.
socks in his drawer.
I actually do. So I'll show these today
Okay.
because they are festive. They came in a set of Christmas socks, and these are
Oh, snowflakes.
like, yeah, and so like
Highly
these are cool.
appropriate for Arizona. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because we actually never get snow here. But no, I actually did have an extra pair of socks in my drawer that I don't know why. The other day I was like, I'm gonna leave one here because you never know. And
There you go.
I won't show these socks yet. You guys are gonna have to wait for these.
Those will be January. Come
Yeah,
back.
we can come back in January and
So,
show.
what do you got for us today, Matt?
Okay, so couples reach out to me all the time, and I will ask them what their goals are. And their most common response from everybody, and I mean, I don't fault them for it, but the most common response is we need to work on our communication skills.
Mm,
And if I were to tell people the biggest issue that they have is not communication skills, I mean, it is, but it isn't, right? The biggest issue people have is they don't know how to listen. And in my judgment, right, that is definitely my judgment working with so many different couples that I see. And there's lots of reasons for it. I think one of the reasons people don't know how to listen is one, I'll start here. They misinterpret what's being said. So if Tammy, for instance, you were to say to me, um, Matt, the webinars have really been frustrating for me lately, and what I hear is my webinars with you have been frustrating because maybe I'm not preparing well enough or something, right? And so now I'm now responding based on what I am misinterpreting. And so I think a huge issue is the misinterpretation of information. I take it personal rather than me stopping and saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you for telling me. Let's like, why don't you tell me more about what that means?" Right? And I spend time sitting in what you're saying, even asking questions. I heard one person recently say, you almost need to tap into the ignorant part of yourself. If you're going to listen to somebody, tap into the ignorant part of yourself, which is, hey, you know what? I'm not going to make an assumption that I know what that means. I'm just going to instead say, I'm not sure I understand. Tell me more. And I really like that idea, but I think in order to tap into the ignorant side of ourselves, we actually have to tap into like the humble side of ourselves, right? This part of ourselves that says, maybe I don't understand. Maybe this person can teach me something. Um, maybe I'm not hearing. Another issue is that we misidentify the problem. So a lot of times we're listening to try and hear what the problem is. And I've tried to explain this before, and I think if I were to make a stereotypical judgment, men misidentify problems. I was going to say more, but I would say maybe more quickly than women. And I would say that probably more as like a, maybe you could say men are trained to listen for problems. How can I be the fixer? How can I be the hero? I don't even think that that's a negative thing. I just think, um, and maybe this is wrong, but there's probably more men who are engineers than there are women, right? And I don't know if it's true, but I would think it's true. And so just that mindset of, in order to be effective, I need to be a fixer. I need to be a problem solver. And I wonder sometimes if in that case, the person listening is jumping to, oh, the problem must be this because that's what you're telling me. And if I were to be stereotypical, women are like, here, let me throw out 1,000 different ideas because I don't exactly know what the issue is. I just want a safe space to talk about it, to explore conversation. And like I tell most people, if you listen well enough, most of the time, the person you're listening to solves their own problem. And so but it's fascinating to me in a partnership situation how quickly we are trying to identify the problem and then solve it. And it might be because I'm uncomfortable with conflict. And if you're bringing something up to me, it must mean that there's conflict and you're unhappy. So I'm uncomfortable. We need to solve it. And so now I'm going to listen as quickly as I can, identify the issue, solve the problem, and okay, we're good now, right? And it's interesting how many times partners will say to me, I don't even understand what the problem is. And I'm like, well, have you asked? Well, yeah, but like it doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, so have you tried explaining that and asking more questions? But it's a very it seems like an intuitive skill, and it seems like a simple skill that everyone should understand. And I actually think that the skill of truly being able to listen is not intuitive. I think the skill of being able to listen is rare. One of the things I had to do when I first became a therapist is I had to learn to listen without thinking anything. And that's not easy. They're like, what do you mean? I am not thinking about what my next response is going to be. I'm honestly listening. Anytime you read a question, I'm listening to the question. I'm rereading the question, seeing if I can identify what's going on. Because if I don't gather as much information, then most likely my answer is going to be wrong anyway. So that's another skill. A technique of listening would be don't listen to respond. Listen to try and identify and feel and experience the person, and then communicate that back. So this would be just, I think, such an important skill set that really is difficult for people. So there you go.
But this applies not just within your primary relationships. This is like, I mean, this is one of those, and I think there's a difference between hearing something and really listening, because I can hear, all of the whatever and not take any of it in, be, like you said, planning my next response, doing whatever, when you're talking about, um, uh, identifying the problem. Like I see this all the time with addiction. Like people call me and they perceive that the problem is the acting out. And I'm like, that's the symptom. Like, and then there's the rest of, there's the underlying issues, So, but like, if we just stop this stuff, then everything's going to be fine. And so to me, that's a really concrete example of like, we're going to identify the problem. We're going to attack the, sex and porn addiction and the unfaithfulness, and then we're going to be all fine. No, because that was just a symptom of it. Just like, drinking or any of the other problematic behaviors, we want to understand what's going on underneath there so that we can get, handle those triggers and all of those other things.
Yeah, you're going to attack the problem and get it resolved. And then you're going to realize, wow, we don't even know each other. Maybe we don't even like each other. That all this time we've been lonely. like you're going to actually discover all these underlying issues that has just been covering up.
I find for myself too that, like, you're talking about the being curious. I find for myself, like if I'm having a reaction, like, if I'm, listening to something or reading an email or whatever, and I'm having a reaction, I'm like, oh, slow down, reread that. Don't respond. Like do not respond in the moment. Like think it through. And, like the other day there was an email and I was going to respond. And I thought you should go for a run first. And that was a really smart idea. I never even responded, because it was like one of those emails that was just going to flare everybody up. And I was like, there are certain things that I just like, I don't even have to, I heard, and, and it was just like getting into a battle, wasn't necessary. for me, often too, the being curious, if I'm curious, like a lot of times, like even for myself, like whatever it is that I perceive as the problem isn't really the problem. It, like, it's somebody's, it's a personality type, or I had a bad day, or whatever it is. There's something else completely, but I just, whatever it is that I perceive as the, "Rrr, this is the problem." It's not, and so, being able to identify, I know lots of people find journaling really helpful. So sometimes, like if it's, I really need to figure it out for myself, like what is really going on, or how do I tie these things together? Journaling for me, you are a runner too, like going for a run, like stuff,
Oh,
you
totally.
know, yeah, like I like, it's amazing to me, a walk or a run, and like a whole bunch of stuff, just kind of shifts into perspective, so there's
Take
ways of handling things.
take a break, but don't withdraw, right?
Right,
Like I can
right,
take a
right,
break, go for a run, go for a ride, I can call a friend, but then I have to come back and re-engage.
right,
Uh,
right. Yeah, I'm not saying disappear and don't have. Yeah, I'm going to go for a run, and good luck with your problem. I definitely want to, but yeah, but if I'm not going to hear you, I'm not going to really listen to you, and I'm just going to be defensive, or try to fix everything for you. That isn't, like, it's okay to go, gosh, I can hear how important that is. I need to think about that for a bit, and I want to respond. So I there's so many ways to slow things down. There is no, I know we live in a fast food society of, microwave, we want to do everything quick. Me too. But
yeah.
on the other hand, some of this stuff is like, we do so much better if we just really, slow what's really going on.
And I guess I want to reinforce this takes so much practice. Like I was working with somebody recently where I had encouraged them. I want you to ask questions. I want you to try and listen and stay out of judgment. And they were like, okay, can I try it right now? And I was like, sure. And then I was like, okay, but watch out for, feeling defensive or wanting to explain yourself. Okay, I got this. And so they start, and their partner starts talking, and then immediately they're like, but like, I don't think you understand, like, and they start wanting to defend themselves. And so I pause, and I say, okay, did you notice that it happened? And they're like, oh my gosh, right? Like we had talked about it, we had like prepared for it, we knew what our goal and objective was. Our objective was to listen. And immediately, as soon as that thing gets hit, it's like, whoa, I react automatically. It is a learned skill to learn how to listen and not react. And so I want everybody on here to recognize that this is practiced and you're going to screw it up, and like fully be prepared to just be awful at it as you learn how to do this.
But keep learning to do this. Like, don't go,
Oh
"Oh,
yeah.
I'm just awful at it." Yeah, like you can't
Yeah.
go, "Oh,
Like,
I'm throwing in the towel." So,
yeah. And I had another client recently who said, you've taught me this over and over, but I realized just the other day that I still was using what you taught me to try and manipulate them to the conclusion that I wanted.
oh
And I said, that's
wow.
fascinating. And this was like really helpful for my client, like not realizing that this is that they were doing this the whole time. They're like, what you're teaching me isn't working. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. I'm telling you, these things work. And then they came
Mhm.
back, it's not working because I was using it as like a tool of manipulation. I wasn't using it to truly sit with them and what was going on. I was trying to get them to come to my conclusion. And I was like, well, yeah, it's not going to work if you do it that way. But it was so cool.
But I think, going back to, what is the goal? If the goal is that I always win, that's not a relationship. If the goal is to be connected in a real and meaningful way with people, it's messy. But like the dividends are huge. But if the goal is to do that, then we have to practice some different things in order to get to a different place. But if it's always, I'm going to win no matter what, I want to manipulate you. So, oh, good, I won. Well, that's not a real relationship. Even if it's a friendship, that's not a real relationship. It's very, me. So, okay, so we have a question. We had disclosure 1 week ago after 2 years post D-Day. Both CSATs advised to start couples counseling now. We have a couples counselor who is a CSAT, and both of our therapists said is great. I, as a betrayed partner, feel so much fear about starting couples therapy because in disclosure, I learned that something I had asked early on over and over was denied by my husband. In disclosure, he admitted it was true. Is it safe to start couples therapy now? I feel so vulnerable. I fear being blamed for still having ambivalence, for feeling so hurt, for not stepping fully into reconciliation with my husband. It feels like fresh betrayal. When is the right time for betrayed partner perspective to step into the couples counseling? This is a lot. So I would love it if you would kind of take this like question by question, please.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Having disclosure a week ago, 2 years after D-Day, I mean, that in and of itself is going to be a very fresh wound. I tend to be a big fan of starting couples counseling right away. There's a lot of therapists in the addiction world, if you will, that like push very much like work on your own, get your own stuff taken care of. And I do think it's really important to do that. But all of this stuff has happened within the relationship. So there are some limitations. If somebody's actively in the addiction and not being honest, there's only so far you're going to get in couples work because they're attached or attaching to their acting out behavior, if that makes sense. And so the fear about starting couples therapy, I think it's totally valid. I would actually say going into it, I would tell the therapist right away, I have a lot of fear coming into this. I do have some ambivalence or a lot of ambivalence, however you want to phrase that. And I'm worried that I'm going to be told that's not why we're not connecting because of my ambivalence, when my ambivalence is because of the hurt and pain that I've sustained. I also have a sensitivity to feeling like I'm being blamed, right? And not stepping in. I mean, I have a hard time believing that you're going to get in with any couples therapist, especially someone that's a CSAT, who is going to like push you. You have to reconcile now. Like that doesn't make sense to me. That would be potentially a therapist who is not maybe understanding the big picture. I think that's the first thing I would focus on is let's talk about why you're not ready for reconciliation. And let's just sit with that feeling of your fear of reconciliation. What do you think that's going to mean for you? Right? That's part of where I would sit. In fact, I would say being here as a couple is a sign that you're stepping into reconciliation. I would never encourage somebody to step into reconciliation farther or faster than they feel comfortable to. And so I do think it is fresh betrayal. And again, I'm going to go back to, I don't think there's anything wrong with stepping into couples counseling at this time, but I would go cautiously and vocalize all of those fears and concerns that you're having, and don't move forward until you feel resolved from those concerns, whether it's through the therapist or you feel heard and understood from your husband in this case. I would stay where your fears are, recognizing that probably being heard and understood is your biggest need in that moment. And that's exactly where I would stay until I get those met. I'm not moving forward. If I can't get those met, then maybe we put a pause on couples therapy. But that's probably where I would stick it out. Tammy, what's
Yeah,
coming up as
yeah.
you hear?
Well, I feel so bad for you because like you asked and asked and asked, and it was so like I can imagine that the betrayal
Oh,
of like I asked this specific question and was lied to, and so and especially when it's been 2 years, like 2 years of waiting, and to have it be like, oh, we think we're moving forward, I'm making this up, but I'm thinking you feel like we're moving forward now, we're having this formal therapeutic disclosure, we're going to be able to process through. He's assured me that this didn't happen, and boom, this is what you heard. So it has to be
yeah.
so painful.
No, and it's hard. I try to encourage people, like, it's tough. Trust your intuition, but you also have to trust that whatever they're telling you is the truth. I think one of the things that's really difficult is I asked you over and over, why did it have to wait until we had a formal disclosure? Like, thank you for coming clean, but for crying out loud, like, like, why weren't you willing to tell me earlier? And that might be a question you ask. Help me understand why you weren't willing to tell me earlier, because I'm in a lot of pain because of that.
Well, and
Um,
I can imagine it feels like it resets the clock, instead of like, okay, we're 2 years on this journey. It's like, it's a week, or 2 weeks or whatever. No,
yeah,
it's a week past that, and that's, unfortunately, a very raw wound for you, at this moment. Oftentimes, most formal therapeutic disclosures, people go, yeah, that was difficult, but now we see a path forward. And what I hear you saying is like, yeah, I'm really not sure. And I agree with Matt, like working with a qualified couples therapist, being completely honest, I'm here. And so I'm still in the coupleship for the moment, but I'm not making any commitments, because, all of this that I thought was happening, and this foundation of honesty that, I thought we had, just got, re-rocked. And so like now I have a week, and hopefully your husband is doing much better with telling the truth and telling it faster, and hopefully as you unpack this with your qualified therapist, and I love that you value your therapist, that betrayal trauma can be addressed specifically for you. But even with all of this, there is no, oh, you have to stay together. And unlike Matt, because he knows like good people, I hear the horror stories of people that, yeah, they're honestly, there's a lot of therapists, even with the letters behind them, that will use, will be manipulative of like, well, you're part of the problem, or, you need to stay together, like, let's, your behaviors are doing whatever. So there's some that we
yeah, and
recommend, and there's others that we don't. So,
yeah, and it's hard because I know that in the past I've probably said things to clients that weren't well phrased, or maybe I was trying to push a client to like see if I could help them figure out what was getting stuck. I mean, I guess any therapist can make a mistake in that area, but I would say that, most therapists who have had the training and have had the experience tend to do a pretty good job about that. But I would say bringing that forward first thing, making that very upfront, like, this is what I need to address before we go any further.
yes.
So important. Don't just go in and go, okay, well, I'll go wherever the therapist takes us. The therapist is just trying to do the best they can with the information they have. I tell everybody, give me all the information you can, so that I can then figure out what the best direction is. So share all that information, those fears and the vulnerability, bring that all out.
Yeah, and hopefully again you're working with your qualified therapist, like what do your boundaries need to be, right now, for your safety, because you're feeling so raw. So what do you need to do, extra support for you to take care of you, when this has been painful. Now, the one thing I will say, I'm at least appreciative that he shared it in this, because I also hear from people that go, he left this off. I had asked him about this and he left it off the disclosure,
Oh,
and it comes out later. That's even worse. I know this is bad, but that's even worse. So again, I'm sorry. I'm glad
yeah,
you're through the formal therapeutic disclosure. Hopefully, as things kind of settle in, you start to see a path forward, and you will, you will find your path regardless of what happens. People are resilient and can heal, regardless of what somebody else does or doesn't do. So
Yep. Everybody type your questions
type
in
your
to me.
questions in. Yes,
Um,
please. We've got another half an hour here. So
I will jump in another thought, and I think I've said this before somewhat recently. As you guys, if how do I say this? I always teach people that the repair of conflict is where attachment is born. And so, like, it's really important to learn to repair conflict. But man, sometimes with the holidays coming up, lots going on. I always encourage everybody have conversations. So if you're nervous about, oh, we're gonna go see this family, and just so you know, I don't want to maybe stay more than an hour or whatever it is, like start having conversations now about your concerns. This is going to sound funny, but like if you have an expectation for your spouse getting you certain gifts for the holidays, or having something in your stocking or whatever it might be, have the conversation now. Like, hey, I fully expect you to have everything for my stocking. I'll do stockings for everybody else, but you're doing mine, that kind of thing. Have those conversations now, so that you aren't disappointed or have higher levels of conflict. And it doesn't mean they're going to follow through, but vocalizing it ahead of time. I try and teach people expectations aren't bad. Expectations are actually good. They help us understand what some of our needs and wants are. Not vocalizing our expectations actually causes a problem.
yes,
Um,
thinking that somebody's
because
a mind reader is a bad option.
Yep. And here's the hard part. You may have said it 20 times already. Like, you may have to write that sucker down and tape it to their forehead before they finally get it. But that's I think can help reduce conflict at this time. So anyway,
I have
just a
this
quick
visual
thought
of
that I had.
people walking around with post-it notes stuck to their foreheads now. So Matt, is your stocking just full of socks? Stockings, socks?
Well,
Oh.
I don't, yeah, is my stocking full of stockings? I'm sorry. That was
No, that's
terrible.
where I was going.
Uh,
No, that's what I was thinking. I
oh,
was
okay.
like, stocking of
Um,
socks. You're a big sock
Socks
guy.
are definitely, so I remember one time my wife telling me, I think it was either before we got married or about the time we got married. She had said to me one time, I don't ever like telling people if like, if you have a friend who loves cows and everything in their kitchen is decorated with cows. Well, everybody will buy them cow stuff. Every time they see it, they buy them cow stuff, and it's really sweet. And my wife's like, not a chance. Because as soon as people know that there's something you like, you start getting like inundated. Well, the cool thing about liking socks is that people buy me socks all the time. And I'm like, sweet, more socks. Like, you can't have too many socks. And so yes, there are lots of socks. And colleagues will buy me socks, and it's kind of funny. I have to be careful when I accept gifts from clients,
Right.
because we're not allowed to accept gifts that are, what I think the kind of the rule, and I think it's an unwritten rule, is like no more than like $25. Right. So people will bring me socks. I saw these and I thought about you. And I'm like, oh, that's really sweet. Thank you. And I can accept them. And then I end up showing them off at some point.
Yes,
So
and
yes.
that makes yes, and it does make, and a token of appreciation is fine, but you're right. Like particularly in this field, I was thinking too when you're talking about like the holidays and being like, I think having a safety plan, like if you're going to go be with difficult people or your relationship is kind of in crisis, having a plan. You can take two cars. You're going to go see
Oh,
your partner's family and their whatever. It
and
could be
it,
your family,
oh no,
I mean,
I
but
tell
yes.
people, yeah, like, okay, we're driving separate cars. I'll tell people to like take like, yeah, like you said, a safety plan. And I'm like, hey, take a crossword puzzle, take something to play with outside so that you're like, telling a family member, hey, let's go toss a frisbee around. Like, there's so many different things you can do that are like, hey, if and when things get ugly, I'm out. Um, I've taken, or I've had family members, they'll bring a guitar and they're like, hey, if things get weird, I'm just gonna go sit on the back porch and play guitar, or I'm gonna go into another room. And as funny as that sounds, I'm like, it's wonderful. Have a grounding plan, things you can do to get grounded. And you might upset your family members. And I'm telling you, it's better for them to be annoyed and frustrated or upset than it is to be in this ugly, high conflict um, situation. So yeah, absolutely. Start creating some plans.
Yes. And having people like, having your posse or tribe that you can connect with and going like, I mean, like even if it's a text, like, I'm just hanging in there for the moment, like just knowing that you're grounded, can be okay. But yeah, like being, but I think for me, just knowing that I can leave, like, I don't have to, but knowing that, if something is like, if it's really untenable, I'm out of here, has given me the space to, to be able to go, yeah, I'm okay in the moment, it's just, but I'm not stuck. I think that's what it is. I'm not trapped, because I've got a plan and I've got people I can talk to, and I've got things I can now with our mobile phones. I mean, it used to be there was a landline, but now with our mobile phones, like, I literally could be texting somebody, and in a crowd of people and not really having to pay attention. But,
Right.
but I want to be part. I use this a lot. We had a wedding up in Colorado, and there's family stuff, and so I was like, I'm going to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So I had like, plan A, plan B, plan C. I had multiple plans because like I need to have a plan, so that I can be my best self. And I didn't need to use any of them, but like knowing I had them made it all okay. So
Oh, and I
okay.
and I think like even texting somebody and saying like, hey, now's a good time to call me.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yes, like
and and like,
911.
yeah, like, hey, I just need a few minutes. Let's chat. Maybe I can
Oh, this
breathe.
is a really important call. I got to take this right now. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
serious. Sounds funny,
No,
but
I'm serious too. No, it's like seriously, whatever, like have plans, like, and have people that I'm going to be at, at a holiday party from this time to this time. Can we be, peer support during this time? Yes. Okay, great. So, Matt, the next question, how do we move past not hearing each other or conversational confusion when I feel like my essay partner has such a warped view of reality that we both get triggered? And even if we don't, conversations go nowhere. We can't afford a couples therapist. So
okay.
that's a great combination of questions too, with different things that are happening or not happening.
Oh, totally. And so let's start out. How do we move past not hearing each other or conversational confusion? I think the most important thing when you reach a point in the conversation where you're feeling confused or you're feeling frustrated is that you actually stop and say, man, I'll be honest, it's hard for me to stay curious right now because your perception of what happened feels so different than mine. And so help me understand better. This is how you saw it. Like, so if I'm hearing you, you're saying this, and that's what your reality was. That's what it was like for you. Now, a lot of times just vocalizing that confusion and what I'm hearing them say can cause them to go, well, I mean, there was this and there was that. And I might say, okay, how come you didn't share that? Like, well, I was just worried. Okay, so you're worried, but now here's what you're saying and hearing. Now, I think an important piece of listening is recognizing that their reality, you don't need to agree with it. Like, you almost need to go, well, shoot, if I had your reality, I think I would have been just as frustrated or confused as you were at that time. And a lot of times, as we lean into trying to hear their warped view of reality, they will often ask us, we don't even have to try and tell them. They'll say, well, what were you experiencing? What was it like for you? And so then you're like, well, I can tell you. And then I share my view of reality, which they often think is warped. Right? The funny part is, and I don't know if this is true, your partner probably thinks your view of reality is really warped as well. And that, I'm not saying it is, it's just they're so twisted in their reality, they don't understand how your reality could be any different. So sit in that confusion and talk about it. Say, hey, I'm struggling. You said this, and now you're saying this. That feels contradictory. Can you explain? And so then let them talk. But it requires you to see what's happening. I'm feeling confusion. These things seem contradictory. I've heard you say something different in the past. Now you're saying this. Can you explain? Right? So it's slowing down and asking those questions and pointing out what's happening in this moment that then draws that person out. But you have to do it in a way that's not like, I caught you. You said this. Now you're saying this. You are a dirty liar, right? You can't jump in with that. You have to stay in that ignorant place of, boy, would you mind explaining that for me? It seems contradictory. So you stay on your emotions and your feelings, pointing out what you're seeing, get them to open up more. Keep them talking. The more you keep them talking, the more likely you are that they're going to circle around to getting out what they really need to be saying. And you say conversations go nowhere. I'd really like to understand, what do you mean? Conversations don't go where you think they should. Conversations end up with both of you being frustrated. Well, then have that conversation. I'd really like to talk to you more without feeling like either one of us can't trust the other person. Or I really would like to have a conversation and I want to feel more connected at the end. Well, we might need to say, okay, if we need to feel more connected, let's have a conversation on some of our common goals and desires. Let's have a conversation on how much we both love our kids or whatever, right? Have a conversation that would lead to what it is you're wanting, if that makes sense.
This person adds, conversations never get resolution and the problem or concern continues.
Yep. And so you might stop and say, hey, partner, what do you think the problem is here? When you hear me talking about this, what is your assumption that the problem is? Because I'm not feeling like we're ever getting it resolved. So have a conversation about that. You say it never gets to resolution. Again, what is it that you think resolution is? Sometimes resolution is we understand each other, but we don't agree with the conclusion. Wow, I really feel understood by you, and I think I can understand you, but we both have a different opinion on this thing, right? And so it's tough when people come to me. We never resolve anything. Okay, well, what does that look like? Oh, well, we just argue and argue until both of us get frustrated. Okay, well then what is it that you guys are arguing about? Like, what would it look like to actually understand each other? So that would be my, sorry, Tammy, go.
No, keep playing that out. So whatever you've got clients that have, so what does it look like if we just agree to disagree? Like, how does a couple learn to play that out?
Well, what's interesting is I've never loved the we agree to disagree, right? It's like, do you understand me? Yes, I feel like you understand me, but we have a difference on opinion of when we should take you know, whose family we should visit this year for the holidays, right? And so then it's like, okay, well, let's talk about where you're at. Okay, so then that's now our conversation. Neither one of us agrees that we should do the right thing or do the right thing. Do this thing, but we both seem to understand each other. So, honey, partner, sweetheart, like, what should we do here? How do we resolve this? So now we're going to have a conversation about like we are in what appears to be a stuck place. We both want different things. We both think that different things should happen. I don't want you to feel resentful if you just choose mine. I don't want to feel resentful if we choose yours. What do you feel like is the best way? Right? Let's have a conversation now about our desire to have a different outcome. Right? And so then it's like, all right, well, let's start exploring options. Maybe we go to your families in the morning, but we miss some of the afternoon activities because we run over and visit my family. What do you think about that? Well, I hate that idea. Okay, let's talk about it. Why do you hate that idea? Well, I think we can visit your family Christmas Eve. Okay, but you know, like you actually start pulling it apart more and talking about the individual things that we don't agree with or understand. But I fear that too many couples are like, well, no, we just need a resolution faster. And I'm like, what if it doesn't work that way? Right? Like, what if major conflict takes a while to sit in and explore with each other? And maybe it's days, maybe it's weeks. Maybe we go, you know what, let's sit on this for a little while longer. We don't have to make a decision yet. Let's sit on this a little longer and see if either one of us has a change of heart over the next few weeks. Let's revisit this on Sunday evening, right? So when I hear people say we never get a resolution, I believe them that in your current negative cycle that you get into, you don't ever feel a resolution. And I think I'm trying to push that, okay, well, what if we try and redefine what resolution actually looks like? What if we take a little bit longer and we continue to revisit it? Most of the time, it's I'm arguing my side, you're arguing your side, neither one of us feels understood. And so that's why we stay in conflict and there's no resolution. Well, focus on understanding each other. You might find that that's the resolution you really need.
Well, and I want to tie into we both get triggered. Okay, like I I have complete control over my actions and reactions. So, if Matt's doing something and it's triggering to me, like, I can say that's really, I'm feeling that right now and I need to take a break. I need to do something and we'll come back to that. But he didn't make me triggered. Something that happened, I'm having a reaction to, and I can choose a different action or reaction. I choose to act rather than react. I really lean into that. But if you guys just go, oh, we're both triggered. Okay, well then guess what? Okay, we're both triggered, and then it's just going to be chaotic, and we're not going to get anywhere. At some point, nothing changes if nothing changes. One of you changing. I've shared with some couples like the Cartman drama triangle. I actually am a fan of that because it's like we can keep doing this negative two-step. I call it the negative two-step, little line dance here. We're doing a little country dance, and it's a really negative one, and you can do it over and over and over and over again. Or one of you stops and goes, we're going to change this, we're going to shift, and somebody's going to try something different. When Matt talked about, like, let's on Sunday night, let's sit down and talk about it. I love having a scheduled time, having a journal, like I've journaled out, because then guess what? I've processed through a little bit of what I've been thinking about, like I'm more clear on what it really is, like, Matt, I don't like that we always that we prioritize your family all the time. I feel like my family gets, and that may be more, what's happening than not just sharing the time or split, or that we're constantly running to everybody else's house. I just want to be at my house. Okay. Like all of those are real things. But if I'm just constantly in the battle of no, 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 then we're never going to get to what's really going on underneath that. So, but the triggering, like saying time out, triggered. Okay, I'm gonna do my 2-minute breathing exercise and I'm gonna think about this. But yeah, just letting it continue to escalate and going, oh, throw in the towel, doesn't change anything for either of you.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. The next one is, uh, as the recovering addict, I'm curious how to manage my emotions and my partner's emotions in regard to the shame or guilt around the effects of my actions, and how her family, that knows about some of my actions, reacts and responds to me after discovery. I'm also unsure what is proper apology regarding her family and mending that hurt as well, all while supporting my partner as best I can. From the betrayed partner, it is worth noting that he has had a good relationship with my parents in the past, and they are understanding of these things. My mom is a retired MFT, my dad a retired addiction psychiatrist, so they do understand and empathize to some degree. That, like, you are actually in a minority that have people that get this stuff. So that actually
Yeah.
is heartening to me.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the hard part. I mean, a retired MFT and a retired addiction psychiatrist, like, my hope is that they would have a lot of empathy and compassion, but at the same time, sometimes that empathy and compassion can go out the window when we tell our family, or the, when we tell somebody like that, hey, I hurt your daughter, I hurt your family member, right? It's like, oh, all this empathy that they practice is really difficult for them in that moment. But how to manage your emotions, and your partner's emotions in regards to shame or guilt. It's a really good question. I actually really advise people don't manage your partner's emotions. Like, I think the one is, hey, let's talk about it. I think gaining a really clear understanding when your emotions come up in regards to your shame and your guilt, are you able to identify, is it guilt or is it shame? Right? Guilt is healthy. Man, I feel bad about what I've done, right? That's not a bad thing, even though it's like I feel bad about what I've done. But then that feeling of like, oh, I just want to go isolate. I don't want them to see me. I'm embarrassed. Right now, we're heading into the shame world, and the best way to deal with shame, as we know, is to call it out. Now, it might not be saying to the family, hey, I need you to know I'm feeling a little bit of shame about all the pain that I've caused and the hurt that I've done to your family members. But it might be saying that, right? That might be, if you will, part of the apology. You might have a conversation beforehand that says, hey, I'm going to come and spend time with the family. And to be honest, I wanted to talk to you individually, mom, dad, because the truth is I'm embarrassed. I'm learning more about myself. I'm realizing what I've done wrong. And if there's something we need to talk about, I was hoping maybe we could do it now before we get there, or, but I would be having these conversations with my partner to make sure, like, are you comfortable if I take this approach? But the best way to deal with shame is to talk about it, especially when it comes up. Let somebody know you're struggling. And then we also want to be vulnerable about it, right? Like, I have to be careful. I think that affirmations by themselves, I sometimes think are a little bit silly. But if I have an affirmation that directly contradicts my shame, so let's say my shame is, you know what, I'm a good person. I've made some mistakes and I've hurt my wife or my spouse or whatever. I've hurt my partner and I feel bad about that. I really care about my partner. I've always loved my partner, but I've made some pretty awful mistakes that have caused a lot of pain. But that doesn't mean that I'm not lovable, that I am lovable. I am a good partner. I can learn to be a good partner.
Mhm.
Whatever phrases I need to be reminding myself of, I'm going to go into that family event with those phrases on my mind, right? But my goal with an affirmation is to directly counterattack the shame. And I'm counterattacking the shame by essentially telling the shame that its beliefs aren't true. So um, that would be something that I would be doing. I'd be asking my partner, hey, have you noticed any of my shame? Or when my shame comes up, how does it affect you? Are you willing to let me know if you see my shame coming up? Um, Maybe we can hold hands. Maybe I could put my arm around you, right? Like as a reminder. Just simple ways. How can we reach to each other in those moments to offer each other support? And then let's see here. The other, so self-compassion, getting empathy from others. Is there anybody else besides your partner that you can reach out to and say, hey, I'm coming to the family party. You know my history better than anybody. And I just want you to be aware that it's going to be rough for you. And so I might come over and talk with you because I need a distraction, right? Those and then in addition to that, let's say it's particularly draining, have a plan for afterwards. Hey, the next day I'm gonna go do something fun with some friends, or we're gonna go out and do something fun as a family, so it just doesn't feel as heavy, right? Have a plan essentially before, during, and after. If you know that in particular it's a heavy shame filled event. But the other thing is, if you're going to go to mom and dad, especially if they are retired clinicians, you can actually say to them, hey, I'm really afraid to tell you what I need most right now when I open up to you about this is as much kindness as empathy as you can, even though it may be painful to talk about, right? I'm going to lean in, like asking for that help. And I might even say to them, I have a lot of shame around this. The story I tell myself is that you think I am worthless or that I'm an abuser or whatever. And so can we talk about that? Do you feel that way? If so, why? How often does that come up? How can I rebuild trust with you? So that's the direction that I'm going to lean in that situation. Tammy, what comes up as you hear me?
Well, yeah, I love that you're saying have the conversation before Christmas dinner. This is not what you want to be sitting around talking about it. Dr. Rob says, like, yeah, you don't want people to know like those kind of things, because then Thanksgiving dinner is awkward, and that's the position. So having those conversations. I love what Matt said about, like, you can't manage each other's emotions. I am responsible for mine. Apologies are like, amends are useful, but guess what? Those are steps 8 and 9 in the 12-step program. So where depends on where you are with that, but just giving a little, I'm sorry, like, is not helpful. Living our how we act, how we live is different. But I said it earlier and Matt just reaffirmed, have a plan, have the plans of, like, here's how I'm going to get through the day. I'm going to have people I can connect with. I'm going to have safe support. I'm going to go, oh gosh, dinner was full. I'm going to go for a little 20-minute walk by myself, ground myself, and be, calling my sponsor, whatever it is I need to do, like, have a plan. But shame is, just like Matt said, it's a useless emotion. It keeps us, spiraling down. But this feels, and I'm making this up, but this feels like earlier in the process, like this is the first Christmas or first big, holiday. So, having the conversation of, I just want us to have a holiday. I would like to talk to you in advance, but, like, I just want us to have a holiday. I'm working on my brokenness. I'm working on being a different person, and I'm going to continue to do the work on a daily basis. Don't make any promises. I'll never do that again, because we can't legitimately make those promises. But at some point, it's okay to be nervous and to go, like, just one minute at a time. I got this.
Sometimes having a plan is all a person needs to not be as anxious, because in their
Yes.
mind, like, I've got a plan. I know I can do these different things. Like, I don't have to stay in this awful place and feel frozen. Just having a plan can be enough to take us out of our anxiety, even if we don't execute the plan at all. I've
Yeah.
had people tell me knowing I could was all I needed to be able to stay in it. Knowing I could leave was all I needed.
Yes, and having separate vehicle of like, yeah, I'm, but like, yeah, I'm an over planner because like I want plan A, but if plan A isn't going to work out for whatever reason, I want plan B's. I want to have options so that like I just, and that helps me just, and like I said, if none of them have to be executed, it's all fine. I haven't spent that much mental energy on it, but at least I know that I'm going to be okay. And for me, being okay is that I'm going to show up as an adult and do what I need to do and not make a problem. So that's so sometimes the bar is that low, but okay. The last question is, last week I had a day where my intuition was very strong that something was wrong. My SA husband was at home, not working and sitting around gaming because things were not great with us. And he just decides to isolate and game and watch TV for days on end when conflict is going on. With my intuition being strong that something was off, I decided to check a clip on our Blink security camera. And lo and behold, one clip I checked, I could hear him gaming and asking a woman to send him nude photos and more. I was disgusted and called him to see if he would be honest. He wasn't until I called it out. I did make him leave the house that day for the first time ever. I worked with my therapist, had couples therapy and SA. Husband said he hit rock bottom and would be more committed to recovery work, and I let him come home. 3 days later, he's back gaming when I'm not home, which is what I made after that event. He is minimizing the event, and I don't know how to communicate the pain of his cheating and minimizing. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, seriously. This is super painful. Is minimizing the event. Uh, I would ask him, because I mean, I don't think there's a specific question in here. I would probably go to him and I'd say, hey, it feels to me like you're minimizing what happened. If you're not, can you tell me what you are trying to do? And I love that you trusted your instinct. I don't know that in every situation that somebody should be going and looking through the cameras, but if that worked out for you this time and it's what you needed to do, then good for you. As far as, it's interesting because I'm trying to sit with that. He's minimizing, and I hear you asking, I don't know how to communicate the pain of his cheating and his pain of his minimizing. And here's the thing that I'm asking is, you're probably communicating it just fine, but it's not having the outcome that you want. Meaning, in your mind, if I communicate the pain, he'll change. I don't know that your pain is what's motivating him, right? Like, I think you'd be better off asking questions like questions that are more about him. Like, I might ask like, hey, after this, it sounded like you were really upset. It sounded like you were hurt. You weren't living in the house, and you had agreed to not come back to doing gaming, and yet you are. And I'm just wondering, how is it that you feel that that's okay? Right? Like, I'm going to ask a lot of questions and try and see if I can get him to figure out what's going on in that head. But yeah, I guess I'm
really curious about he's going to be more committed to recovery work, and there he is gaming and doing this. So he like I can give all kinds of lip service. I'm going to be more committed to that. I'd be like, concretely, what does that look like on a daily basis?
right.
Dr. Rob said it on Monday night at the webinar. He said, have it on the fridge. This is what I'm doing every single day. Why is he not calling his sponsor? Why is he not going to one of our drop-in groups or 12-step meetings, instead of sitting around gaming and, contacting women to send new photos?
But and I don't disagree with any of that, except that it's not, assuming her here, it's not her job.
No.
Right. And so you're right. Like, I would ask him the question, like, what does more committed to recovery look like?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I want to know what your plan is.
Yeah,
I'm not just like, oh, I'm going to be more committed.
I don't want to tell you what your plan should be. I want to know what your plan looks like.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. My healthy boundary for me would be, you're going to whatever it is for you, but Like, I want to see what your recovery plan is, stick it on the fridge so that I know what you're doing on a daily basis. And as much as I love books and, you know, the podcasts and webinars, that is not connection with peer support. It's not accountability. So on one of the Fridays, Debbie McCrae did a great one on what accountability looks like. It was 10 or 12 things, I don't remember, but that would be really interesting for him to watch, and you too, because you would know this is what you're looking for, is the accountability. Because we say this all the time, addicts with boredom, you know, if we have free time, that's a high risk situation, you know. And so if we're not packing that in with good things, you know, this is what happens. And, you know, but until and unless, and I say this all the time with people too, until and unless the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same, we don't change, you know. So right now, you know, the pain of change is, you know, he's back, and I'm not blaming you. I mean, this is like, he's back in the house, and, you know, and he's back to gaming, you know, and you know, changing takes effort. Like, you know, like Matt talked about, you know, he shared about the couple, they practiced, and the person immediately went right back to the same pattern of, you know, jumping in and defending. We have to learn new ways of dealing with life, and we can, but we have to be intentional about it and not just go, oh, I'm going to go sit with my phone and do my gaming. And I might end up, you know, contacting women, you know, that could happen, but it wasn't what I planned on, you know? So anyway, that was my thought. So I would encourage healthy boundaries for you. What do you need for you? And I did put, we have a treatment program for guys like him. Like that's what we do. We have a residential treatment program, 14, 21, or 28 day length of stay. And we help guys have a life-changing experience, stop the problematic behavior, address the underlying issues. We have a family specialist. All of those things, you know, make a shift. Read the testimonials on our website. Like, you guys have a life-changing experience. I love that. I like it more when we hear that from partners and spouses. You know, this was life-changing. I can see he's different. I have hope. I don't trust him 100%, nor should you, but I have hope that things are moving in the right direction. That's a good thing. So we're late. Yeah. So thank you, Matt. Happy holidays to you. Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. Reach out if we can provide resources. The work groups will be starting up again in January. Sex Addiction 101, that would be another one for this gentleman. The Betrayed Partner, we have the Betrayed Partner in-person retreats. So excited to offer those as well. So lots of resources for you. Get through the holidays, but we're here to support you. Keep watching the schedule, because the schedule is different through the holidays. But thank you, my friend, and happy holidays to you and your family.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
See you next year.